want to introduce you to everyone on the panel. I want to start first with Michelle. Michelle will be moderating our panel today. Michelle Daly, founder of the Daily Collective, has been in recruitment for some time. Just kills it. And we have Jessie Harte, Associate Creative Director from Digitas. Give a welcome, round of applause. Woo! We have Jennifer Zinn from Firstborn. Give a round of applause. And we have Cynthia Carrasco, Associate Director from SVB Health. Round of applause. We have Creative Internship Manager, also known as Mama Goddess, Emily Elyshevitz. And Dan Langlitz. I don't know if you could follow that title up, but Dan is a Senior VP at BBDO. Give him a round of applause. I also want to give a huge thanks to the students and interns that came, and also our student members. We are here to kind of give back to you guys and help out our corporate members, and hopefully this acts as a great recruitment event for you all to get jobs, because that's the most important part. I also want to say, feel free to take a ton of books. They're in the back. We're going to throw them out, but we want them to have a new home. So please take them on the way out. Enjoy the alcohol. It's from Vias Imports. And if you have not entered, woo! If you have not entered the raffle, when you walked in, you could enter a raffle to win our latest annual. So nice little perk. Without further ado, Michelle, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, One Club, for having us. I think it's going to be a really good hour. I think it's a very interesting group we have here today, in part because we've got some people from different backgrounds all together. So here with Jessie and Jennifer, we have two people who are from the creative side of things. They're working creatives. Then with Cynthia and with Emily, we have two who are on the recruitment side and more of the creative management side. And then Dan at the end has a slightly different perspective coming from the account side. So I think across the whole group, hopefully there'll be a couple different points of views, opinions on things, and towards the end, feel free to ask some questions. We'll open it up, and we'll take it from there. So I have my index cards. We're going to see how many I can get through in, 40 minutes or so. But before we started, I just wanted to get a sense from the audience so that we can kind of tailor some of our responses towards people who are here. Just by show of hands, how many people here are summer interns somewhere? Okay. And of the interns, are there any interns that are not on the creative side? Okay, a few, cool. And are most of have you guys graduated? I guess by show of hands, how many have graduated? Okay. And any interns that still have time to go before they graduate after the internship? Okay, cool. Cool. Okay. So I wanted to start just on the subject of portfolios. Are you guys in the place of having completed your portfolios or still building the portfolios? I guess show of hands, who has completed them already? Okay, and still building them? Or still? Okay, all right. So we'll spend a few minutes on portfolios, and hopefully that'll be interesting. So first question is for Cynthia and Emily in particular. And the question is, how many pieces should up-and-coming creatives show in their books? And along with that, how much time do you honestly spend looking at each portfolio?
Can everybody hear me? I don't use this all too often. I would say, just in terms of advertising creatives, we usually look for a solid 3 to 5 campaigns with different executions, all digital, traditional. So, the important piece of it is really defining that you can concept and that you can bring good ideas to life, and more importantly, that those ideas can kind of survive beyond just an app or beyond just a print ad. So I think a lot of it is a mix of both the concept being key, but also being able to communicate through different executions. Honestly, probably like 20 to 30 seconds. If you don't have my attention, I'm moving on to the next. And it's a short span of time. And I would even say that's longer than I've spent on resumes, to be honest. When it comes to submitting candidates to hiring managers, I can submit all the resumes I want. If you do not have a book ready to present, you're not going to get in the door because they don't even want to read the resumes. I mean, at least that's my experience. And yeah, I would say probably like 3 to 5 solid ones. Anything more might be overkill.
Okay.
Hi. I like to see about 3 or 4, maybe 5, but I like integrated campaigns because I like to see an idea through every possible platform, right? I spend a little bit more time, okay, because I'm not a creative by training. So I'm a little bit more, I would just say patient. I also look for a couple of other things. I will look at your Instagram. It's important to me. I'm looking at your aesthetic, okay? And because Ogilvy is a very, very large company, you're going to be working on, I dare say, you're going to work on banners, you're going to work on resizing. So I need to know that you can craft. I need to know that your eye is refined. I need to know that you have a point of view. So your books, for me, if you need to have, I don't want to see a resume. A resume is nothing to me. I need a portfolio, okay? I don't need a Behance. I need a portfolio, all right? So go by your names, firstandlast.com, GoDaddy, do it now, okay, if you haven't done it. Those are the things that I look for. I really want to see your point of view aesthetically, okay? Because you will be judged. The creative directors will judge and have judged based on your aesthetic. Are you going to make me laugh? Are you going to make me feel something? For me personally, please do not depress me in the first piece. Just don't depress me. It has happened. Make me laugh. Do Lee had a wonderful piece in his book that made me laugh, that made me smile. So,
Okay, cool. And is there anything else that you like to see in the portfolios, like an About Me section or other interests and that sort of thing?
yeah, your bio is so important because I want to see who you are when you are not doing advertising. I want to see the things that you're interested in. Are you an illustrator? Are you a sculptor? Do you like to make movies? What do you do? Are you a maker? I love makers, okay? So I will look at your bio. That's interesting. I always ask you to put a tab in that has your personal project work, right? So I have kids that do all kinds of things. I have Isabel, who does astrology. I love that. That's interesting to me. And like I said, oh yes, your Instagram pages, your Twitter pages. If you are a writer, you need to have a Twitter page because you are curating your image for this industry every which way you turn. If you want to have your frat party pictures, do it on a different account. Don't attach it to your portfolios, and do not have a link to any of your social media that is dead, okay? If you make me go and click on it and I can't open it, I'm pissed off, all right? It is.
Before we move on, Cynthia, any other pet peeves that you have when looking at portfolios or resumes?
Yeah, I would agree with the dead links. Not a good look. Also, just a range and tonality. That's really important and key for me. Is that again? You want to make me laugh, but I also want to be emotionally charged in different ways. So maybe I don't want to be sad, but I definitely want to have my heartstrings pulled a little bit, and I want to be able to know that you can do that, yeah, as well as make me laugh, as well as make me want to do something or want to purchase something, because that's what we're in it for, right? Changing behavior, creating behavior, and that kind of thing. So I would say one of my pet peeves would really be just doing something for shock value. If you're just creating something to elicit this reaction, it's not making me want to do anything. It's just going to make me want to click on to the next thing. So I think shock value is kind of a pet peeve for me.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next set of questions. This is for the other three of you. And actually, maybe Jennifer, starting with you, because the question is, what were your own internship experiences like, if you can remember back then? And the reason why I'm going to Jennifer first on this is because Jennifer, who is now a creative director at Firstborn, started at Firstborn as an intern herself.
So what was my internship
What was,
experience
yeah, if you remember,
like?
what were those experiences like, and were there any lessons that you learned that you still kind of apply today?
I worked really hard. Felt really out of my depth. I was trained as a classic graphic designer, kind of jumped into digital just sort of head first, not a lot of prior experience. So just constantly learning from people, like looking at other people's work, especially the more experienced art directors that I was working with. I would like open up their PSDs and just see their technique, how they were using Photoshop to create certain effects. I would look at, I would just like kind of, click around the project server and look at projects that I'm not working on and just sort of digest everything else that's being done. Something I've learned that I still use, or that I still kind of actively draw on now, is just being proactive. It's a piece of advice I got when I was looking for internships, and I didn't quite really understand what that means, but basically it's just don't wait till someone comes to you to ask for something, because that means it's too late. Like if a creative director or art director comes to you and has to ask how something is going, it's sort of like you should have been kind of sending them stuff along the way. But in other kind of respects, it's just if you're not busy, ask for work. And if you are not feeling challenged, ask for more responsibilities. And so that's something that I just still practice today. So I would say being proactive is huge.
Great, thank you. Jessie.
So, hi everyone. I got my first, I never went through like a formal internship program like a lot of you guys are. I got my first internship just through getting a job at Siegel and Gale. As I was going to design school, but I was their receptionist for the summer, and that's sort of how I made my little hustle over to creative. Something that I did very similar things. I would go find people in the creative department to teach me things. I would open up at the time they were designing all the Amex credit cards, so I would open up those PSD files and be like, what is this? There were thousands and thousands of layers. But, yeah, exactly. Take them home, steal fonts. But, ultimately then I think something really specific that I learned there, and also because I think I was the receptionist meeting everyone, and it was to be nice to everyone and to take something from learn something from everyone that you're meeting. You never know when you'll come across people again. Everyone plays a part working at an agency. It's not like just creative advice, that's I think just some life advice. Ultimately then when I moved, another internship I had after that was at Vogue. It was very interesting. It's sort of a place I learned, for me personally, things I didn't want to be doing. I actually wanted to be working in a digital space, but I did at the time when I was stacking magazines, rip out all the cool things I could. I actually still have at my office all my books from my internship there of the things that I took. I think I got a lot of aesthetic from that internship.
Can you pass it down to Dan at the end? And Dan, as you answer that question, maybe we can also transition into the next, which is, what qualities, in your view, make for an amazing intern?
Okay, I can link up those two questions. So
Thank you.
I'll bring a slightly different perspective because I ended up in account management, but I was always interested in creativity, and that's why I was checking out ad agencies and stuff in the first place. So when I was in college, I had two different internships that stand out, and neither one was like a huge, big-time internship. And I think that's important to mention because I feel like young people that intern these days, you feel like I need to work for like the biggest agency or the biggest design shop or fashion label or something like that. And it still works out if you don't, and that's kind of up to you. So I worked for this teeny tiny little boutique shop in Philly, which is now defunct. It's closed. And I was just trying to absorb as much as I could. And I was talking to the creative people and talking to the account people, and I wasn't really given too much work. So it was kind of up to me to have these conversations and do stuff besides go fetch coffee. You know, and I think what I was picking up on was what kind of environment I might like to work in eventually. So read that stuff too. Not just the work that you're doing, but you end up at a job every single day. So do I want to walk into this place every day and spend a ton of hours there, and more hours than I spend in my own apartment? And you got to like read that stuff too. And then I worked at the Center Daily Times in Pennsylvania. I went to Penn State, and so I was working at a small county newspaper, and just, you know, I was like, maybe I want to work at a newspaper or something like that. But there I was given a lot of responsibility, so a different, you know, sort of experience. And so I think the trait, if I think back on that, and the trait that stands out is I was just trying to take stuff in. And I was having conversations with people, and I was trying to figure out what their day-to-day looked like. And so I sort of learned a lot from that and tried to find mentors and tried to find people with wisdom. So that was huge. No matter where you are, I mean, like, find those people and seek them out. And they probably haven't been doing the same thing for their entire career as where they are in this moment also. So pivot to the next question. I think that that's one of the keys. I mean, I look for interns now who are willing to take on more, willing to treat it like an actual job. So it's not like an internship where they're going to come in, do 7 or 8 hours, and clock out. And I have an intern on my team right now, and I'm giving him real work as if he was an account executive or an assistant account executive, because I know that that's going to teach him, coach him, train him, get him groomed, get him ready to work for real. And then some of that is up to the individual also. So what do I see out of him or other interns? Like, what are they trying to reach for and stretch for and take on that's more than what we're asking of them? I think you have to be curious, and you really have to like turn that experience into something more than what it looks like if you were to read a job description on paper.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. And this one, I guess, for anyone who wants to answer, what about your expectations of juniors? So probably once they've graduated, maybe from the internship section to now, you know, you've brought them on. What are your expectations for what juniors coming into the industry should be able to do already, especially nowadays when there sometimes seems to be more limited support, time, you know, lack of mentorship, right? These are all, I think, kind of issues that, you know, that the industry faces these days. So what do you expect from juniors? How do you challenge them?
Okay, I like when juniors have a clear idea about where they see their lives in about 2 or 3 years out of their internships. And I think because creative directors and GCDs and CCOs are so completely busy, you have to help them mentor you, okay? Also, I think that juniors have to know that one of the best things about them is the fact that they are teaching. I always say mentorship is, there's reciprocity. So you are teaching your mentors things about the industry or about pop culture or about art. So you're going to give that to them, and they're going, in return, they're going to spend time with you, and they're going to share their wisdom. So have an idea about what it is that you want to do. And I'm always floored because there's always, each person has a different idea of how they see their life in the future. And whatever they want, when they come to me and they say, well, you know, I think I want to be an ECD in 5 years. I'm like, well, baby, first you gotta, you know, crawl before you walk. But I asked them, what are you reading? Who are you talking to? Who are you spending time with? Are you going to networking events? Are you doing any kind of thing that invite people to? Maybe something that might wind up being a team building thing. Are you talking to your group creative directors and making suggestions? You have to help them lead. That's how I see it at Ogilvy, because we're just so busy, you know, but we're open to ideas.
I think on that point of just the higher ups being very busy, it kind of puts the onus on you to make yourself known. So send out the invites, or pop over to their desks and let them know. I mean, I actually had one of my juniors reach out to our chief creative officer, and she has like a standing monthly meeting with him where she goes out to lunch, like a little buffet place by the office, just to kind of touch base on how she's doing and what she can be doing in the agency. I think that's amazing. Does everybody do that? Is everybody expected to do that? No, but in your own ways, even on your own teams with your own higher ups, kind of just try to be memorable. Because they are dealing with a lot of work, and on some big teams. I mean, some of my CDs oversee maybe 20 to 30 people on one team, so it gets a little nutty. But yeah, I think it's in your hands to be noticed, and not that we want to have burnout with anybody, but I'll be honest, a lot of times the juniors that come in earlier or stay later, they're the ones that get noticed by that middle management too, and if they can put their hand up for something else, it's a little more memorable. So, and also on the point of being proactive, if you find yourself not really busy, raising your hand. If there's a resource manager on staff, going to them and seeing, if there are any teams that can use your support while your team might be a little light.
I can maybe speak to some of the technical proficiencies that I usually look for as a creative director. So we are a digital shop. So the things that I mean, all the CDs look for are good grasp, solid grasp of typography. I mean, you're really not going to get into the door even if I see that your typography skills are kind of sloppy. Just a general good sense of design. Like I can trust you with certain things. Technical proficiency in Photoshop, Sketch, sort of industry software. It's fine if you don't know everything, but you should just kind of understand, if I ask you to do a mobile version of a web page, you kind of know how to approach it. We sometimes hire people who we feel is really talented, but they're kind of lacking on some of the sort of digital knowledge. So in certain instances, I'm willing to coach someone. Other things.
But for the most part, the expectation is that they know it pretty much coming in.
Yeah. You should kind of be able to, if I tell you, okay, build me this mobile version of this site, then you can kind of go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, just pass it to her, because my next question is for you, Jessie. Can you think of any mistakes that you made as a junior, and then conversely, because maybe you were perfect and there were no mistakes along the way, is there anything that you can remember doing that kind of helped you navigate your path and your kind of future?
Yeah, sure. I told my team this was the question I was going to get. And I asked what would be appropriate to share. No, very, very specifically, I can remember, getting client feedback maybe one of the first times and just taking it really personally. Clients, you can do really great work. They can then go change the brief. I remember taking it really personally, and I think that, as I've gotten older and more experienced, I realize you have to roll with the punches. That is sort of just, part of our industry. You have to be flexible, and you just have to understand that that's part of it. And I mean, I don't know, I always want to tell a client when they're wrong, but Sometimes you have to, you know, you can't do that all the time.
Dan, do you have anything to add? Okay. Will you pass it?
I can contribute when it comes to mistakes. It's like mine wouldn't be technical, like mistakes when it came to developing work or anything like that. I think my stuff is like, it's probably similar to your answer actually. It's like broad sweeping, like emotional infractions. I don't like you do take it very personally. You do take your work very seriously. I'm sure everybody in this room has a lot of pride in what you do, and your output is distinctly yours. And you're very vulnerable, I think, when you put that out there on the table in any sort of design or writing field. And so our mistake is to maybe not be so humble when it comes to receiving feedback. I mean, so that's one thing. For me, I think in my position, it is dealing with client feedback a lot of times, and you need to know how to separate, okay, the personal from what's really just work-oriented, and none of this is actually me. So it's something that I do constantly, I think, still, which came from learning at a younger age, was like, you're at work, and yes, you do really, really care about it, but you have to understand when it's like, when it's business is business, and this is not an attack on your, you know, your personal portfolio necessarily, or something like that. You know, I kind of find myself navigating those situations like constantly, and the more you can make that discernment, I think just the better off you'll be.
Thank you. Moving back to Jennifer, question for you and then for Jessie. On the creative process, can you just kind of quickly take the group through what the creative process is, maybe from, you know, briefing on through?
For me personally, I'm usually involved in the project from the very, very beginning. So for me, it's actually really trying to understand the client's business. Like, I go look them up on Wikipedia, I go to Reuters and I read about, you know, their recent news, what's going on with their company. Why are they coming to us to do like a VR experience, or like to overhaul their branding, or to do a new .com? There's always like a business decision behind that, and as a creative, it's more on me as a CD, but you know, it's good to understand that, because they don't just like throw money around. So that's where I generally start. So from there, I really try to understand their business needs. I understand who they're trying to target, the user needs, and then kind of map those two together and see what makes sense, what's like a good creative solve for that particular scenario. And then kind of towards the end, I really get into sort of the fun stuff. It's like, well, what's the vibe that we're trying to go for? I look for inspiration. You know, I look at all the standard places. I look at Pinterest. I have a big bookmark list of stuff, websites that I've like seen, photographers. I don't like looking at stuff like Dribbble or Behance. It's kind of, it's a lot of like recycling. I don't really like that. And then, you know, usually I try to communicate my ideas to my team. So usually for a junior creative or, you know, an intern, you're not going to be coming in at the beginning of that process. But, you know, for when you get a brief from a CD or an art director, I mean, I would hope that you kind of keep some of those things in mind and like try to understand the client, what they do, because usually I see the most common mistakes that juniors make is like they try to push their own agenda too much. It's like they only do stuff that they think is cool, and that's totally not what the client wants generally. So.
I think, I mean, I have a pretty similar process of, you know, diving in and learning a lot about the brand. The work that I lean towards in this industry is more product design focused, experience design, if you will. And so what we do oftentimes is when we're looking at a brand and their competitors, we'll actually then go think about what the ask is and just, you know, not even think about the competitors, but go and look at what other best-in-class brand, like best-in-class, you know, scenarios are for that kind of work. You know, if a bank is making an app for a bank, they don't want to look like every other bank. They want to look just like a great digital experience. So we'll do a lot of research like that. And something that I try and take advantage of quite a bit is just team brainstorming sessions. Sometimes we'll get a brief and we'll just not know, we got a brief for a game the other day and we just started, sitting there with a beer and talking about games. And it felt like we were going nowhere. And eventually after doing that a couple times, we actually formulated a plan. So I think working as a team, I remember in college, like everyone who would work together in the computer lab sort of wound up doing better than the people that went off by themselves. So, yeah.
And just one thing to add, we'd also kind of look at what's out there, but then also think about like what is sort of the white space. So I think that's a key part to consider too. You don't want to just keep executing the same ideas, like, being part of the trend. So.
Will you pass it back to Dan, please? Dan, this is a question only for you. Question is, from your perspective as an account director, what makes for a great creative partner? What are the qualities that you see in the most successful creative people that you work with? What do you like to see? The creatives that you're happy that you're going to be working with on the next project. Why are you happy to be working with them in particular?
I hope they're happy to work with me. I often kind of contemplate that in reverse, actually. So I think as an account person, you always want to make sure the creative people are happy, and I'm always really proud of a good creative relationship that I have, because I think at the end of the day, the creative work fuels what we do, and it's the strategic thinking and the ability to manage and navigate and everything, but we're all doing it in service of the work. And so early in my career, actually, I thought of a different way I could have answered the mistake question, which I really should talk about later. But I've approached the creative relationship a little bit differently, and it was in a way that was sort of like, here's a checklist of stuff, and let's go through it, and that's not actually the right way to manage, because the right thing to do is kind of like get into the nitty-gritty of why the feedback is what it is and help break it down for my creative partners if they weren't party to the conversation with whoever gave it. And, if something can't be red and it has to be blue, well, why? Does it have to be blue, or can it just not be red? Maybe it could be yellow. Do you know what I mean? And you got to get into that detail. And so the best creative partners that I have are the ones who I think we can just kind of kick it together and maybe sit in an office, or you talked about playing games and having some beers, and you just talk about the process, and you talk about, do you share a vision for the end goal, and do they feel like I have something to bring to that equation beyond just kind of the back and forth. That's the thing I hate about that approach to account management. It can't be like the middle. You have to be in it in service of the creative work too. And so my creative partners understand my role. I understand how to serve them and how to get to ultimately what's going to be the best output in conversation with them, and I hope that they sort of appreciate the position that I'm in most of the time too, which is, it's like trying to get the best detail, the best information that I can to aid them in their process. The stuff that I look back on that I'm most proud of is when me and an executive creative director were like tight on stuff. We were traveling to pitch presentations. We're having a beer afterwards. We were just, we were friends. It wasn't just business.
Thank you. Next question, and this is for anyone. Can you kind of share with the group some thoughts on pros and cons of big agencies versus small agencies, as they're kind of starting to navigate maybe where they go for their first jobs? What are some of the advantages of working in larger environments or smaller environments?
I started my first job at a pretty small place. There were 90 people, and I loved, meeting people from every department. I thought that was pretty cool. Digitas, and it was a great place to learn. Digitas, I think when I started, was like maybe 500 people in New York. And I remember someone saying to me when I was going there, don't get lost. And you join a big shop and you're probably part of a small team. So I think it is what you make it. You have to figure out ways to, stand out from the crowd. I think it's probably harder to do at a bigger shop, but not that hard. You can find ways.
Well, Firstborn is definitely on the smaller side. We're about 100 people. And when I first started, it was even smaller. It was about 30. So I would say the biggest pro, I think, is you get to wear a lot of hats. You get a lot of opportunities to prove yourself. You know, it's, like you said, it's probably a little easier to stand out if you do good work. You're able to connect more directly with the top senior creatives. And I would say maybe that's a con too, like having to wear a lot of hats. Sometimes it's demanding. You do have to work hard because there's just nowhere to hide.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I know with the larger agencies in our network, we have probably about 801 building, and you know it'll definitely put a little more pressure on you to do a little more, do a little better, and that kind of thing. Whereas some of the smaller shops, as the smallest one we have is probably about 150 to 160 people. You definitely get a little more autonomy with the senior levels there, and you know if there's other initiatives outside of just straight up client work, raising your hands for that is definitely noticeable a little bit more so. So it's a balancing act.
At Ogilvy, it seems to me that as a big agency, we have little kind of shops, you know, right? So it's like Dan was at Ogilvy years ago. So I don't see people actually getting lost. I think in each account, they function as a small family. So if they know that somebody is doing well, they can put them on certain, you know, work. But I think that in a larger agency, if something has gone awry and someone is not happy, there are more opportunities for them to work on other things. I don't know, maybe that's just the culture of Ogilvy and Mather, but that's what I've found.
I think I've actually seen both, so I'll just be quick. So I was at Ogilvy for a while, like 9 years, and I'm at BBDO, which is a big one now too. But I was at Goodby in New York in between, which was a small sort of outpost of the San Francisco operation, and that was small. It was like 17, 20, 21 people at our largest. The biggest difference for me was just the resources that you have. So in a big place, you've got resources. You've got someone for everything. You've got like a social expert. You've got a design team. Then you have art directors who are separate from the design team. And then you have, a whole finance group. And just there's experts in all areas. And then at a smaller place, you have to be scrappier. And you'll probably, that was like a good point about touching a lot of different things. Whereas at a bigger place, you might become a specialist on one thing or one or two things. But it's not like one's better than the other, and actually individually we all are sort of tailored to one or the other maybe, but that's like a thing that you might have to figure out for yourself,
So, similar sort of question, but knowing now what you guys didn't know then. So, these guys who are starting to think about where they might want to work, what critical questions would you suggest that they look into for all the places that they might be interested in working? What are the things that they should really be researching about the companies? Things like we talked about a bit earlier about, is there anyone I can learn from in this place? Is there anyone like me? What are a couple things that you guys might be able to think of that you realize would be important for these guys to learn as they join the industry? Did that question make sense?
I would say culture, I think. I always kind of start there. I've worked for a couple places with a phenomenal culture, and if you can sort of get to a point where you understand what that culture is and how to define it, and if you buy into that, and you know that other people at the company buy into that, that's a great place to begin. Like, is that a place where you feel like you want to be and you can contribute something, and at the same time you can take something away from it? So I would always start with the culture.
I definitely think culture is very important. I think the industry is changing so fast, and And agencies change so fast, and CCOs leave companies and they go other places. And so I think you have to look at, if you're interested in a particular company, look at what's going on, what kind of work they're doing, who's in charge at that given time, and don't take for granted that the research that you've done on a particular company a month ago is still really valid, you know, a month later or even 2 months later, because there's so much change. And look not only in the creative leadership, but also look towards, you know, upper management. Who is leading? What is their track record? I think those are the things. It's a constant research. Do they have accounts that you want to work on? Would you want to do banners and resizing? Oh, yes, you will. Well, do you want to do them on particular accounts? Just constant researching. I think it's important to know who you would be talking to, know something about them. Yeah, culture is huge. We have a very strong culture. Like, we may have trouble in some other areas, but always constantly redefining ourselves. But Ogilvy's culture is so strong. It just hasn't died. It's still that kind of very family-like. It's a big, huge animal. It's a kingdom. It's the Game of Thrones, quite frankly. It so is. We have a castle, a chateau, right? We do. It is like really, and there are dragons, really. But I think that you have to constantly do your research. Never take that for granted.
Question for you, Cynthia. I guess for you and then also for Emily. This is a question on negotiating. What is a fair wage for a junior, both as a freelancer and as full-time? And do you have any tips for them on how they could or should negotiate?
Are we looking at hard numbers here? Is that what we're looking at? Yeah, I guess on the freelance end, because I don't really work on that end all too much, but I'll be honest, we definitely won't bring anybody junior in for less than like 30 to 40 an hour. And then on the salaried end, and keeping in mind healthcare does pay a little bit more than general consumer for the most part. You know, I would say don't sell yourself short, you know, for anything under 45 annually. If you have a really strong book and a couple of internships under your belt and really amazing recommendations to come in with, you know, aim higher. You know, put the number. Do your research too. I mean, you know, from state to state, it's different. From like again, from healthcare to general consumer, that's different. And even within healthcare, specifically, agency network to agency network can vary. So
right,
you know,
and that is true, right?
Yeah.
From geography to geography, depending on what the role is, depending on.
Yeah, I mean, even within our network, you know, our New Jersey office is different from our New York office.
Yeah, that makes sense. Emily, what about negotiating tips, or maybe the opposite? You know, is there, you know, I don't know,
well, I will say this. There's a nasty little game. I don't like it. It's when you're a junior and you go off to another place and you do an interview and they accept you and they give you an offer letter, and then you come back to your agency and you get the agency to counter, and then you leave 2 months later. You're stripping money out of the raised pool for people who want to remain. It's a nasty little thing. It leaves a really bad taste in our mouths. The other thing is that there are many companies. I was at another panel discussion about salaries in advertising, and there are many companies, and I unfortunately don't remember which ones they are, who will not negotiate. Like, straight across, all of their holdings will give a certain amount of money. I will say this, I believe that within the WPP network, if you go from one to another WPP holding, I think it's only a 10% increase.
15, no more than 15.
No more than 15?
No more than 15. Can certainly be lower, but cannot be higher.
Okay, yeah. So that's something to consider. And you got to understand this. Every financial, every HR person, they talk to each other. This seems like it is a huge industry, but it is a really small industry. We all know each other. So, of course, you know, you can be at one place and they'll pick up, I'll say, hey, Dan, what do you know? You know what I mean? So You know, Ogilvy starts juniors between 55 and 60, and it depends on what it is that you bring, and it really, you have to have a really solid skill set. I'm trying to raise the amount for our internships. As far as freelancers go, it has to be a critical need for the freelancer, and that, you know, what they're going to pay, I'm not really sure. I can't really speak on that. But don't play any games. Come on.
All right.
And on that point also, I mean, just to kind of err on that, because it's a passion industry. So I would say if you're going in on something and you see, you know, weigh your options. If you find that, you know, you're negotiating, you know, nickels and dimes, you know, or a couple thousand a year, you know, for another shop that isn't producing the kind of work that you want to be a part of, take that into consideration, because it's such a cliche, but I mean, 15 years doing this, like you find it's very true. You go where your heart is, and the money's going to follow, because your passion's going to be in there. The more enthusiastic you are about your career, the better the work you're going to produce, and the better rewards you're going to get for that. So I do strongly believe in the follow your heart, the money will follow that.
I could not agree with that any more. And thank you. I think that's a great way to end our portion of it.